Mount Rushmore National Memorial is a national memorial centered on a colossal sculpture carved into the granite face of Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills near Keystone, South Dakota, United States. Sculptor Gutzon Borglum created the sculpture's design and oversaw the project's execution from 1927 to 1941 with the help of his son, Lincoln Borglum. The sculpture features the 60-foot-tall, 18 meters, heads of 4 United States presidents recommended by Borglum: George Washington, 1732–1799, Thomas Jefferson, 1743–1826, Theodore Roosevelt, 1858–1919, and Abraham Lincoln, 1809–1865. The 4 presidents were chosen to represent the nation's birth, growth, development, and preservation, respectively. The memorial park covers 1,278 acres, 2.00 square miles, 5.17 square kilometers, and the mountain itself has an elevation of 5,725 feet, 1,745 meters, above sea level. The sculptor and tribal representatives settled on Mount Rushmore, which also has the advantage of facing southeast for maximum sun exposure. Don Robinson wanted it to feature American West heroes, such as Lewis and Kay, their expedition guide Sakagaya, Oglala Lakota Chief Red Cloud, Buffalo Bill Cody, and Oglala Lakota Chief Crazy Horse. Borglum believed that the sculpture should have broader appeal and chose the 4 presidents. Peter Norbeck, a U.S. Senator from South Dakota, sponsored the project and secured federal funding. Construction began in 1927 and the presidents' faces were completed between 1934 and 1939. After Gutzon Borglum died in March 1941, his son Lincoln took over as leader of the construction project. Each president was original to be depicted from head to waist, but lack of funding forced construction to end on October 31, 1941. Sometimes referred to as the Shrine of Democracy, Mount Rushmore attracts more than 2 million visitors annually. Mount Rushmore was conceived to create a site to lure tourists, representing not only the wild grandeur of its local geography but also the triumph of Western civilization over that geography through its anthropomorphic representation. Though for the latest occupants of the land at the time, the Lakota Sioux, as well as other tribes, the monument in their view came to epitomize the loss of their sacred lands and the injustices they've suffered under the U.S. government. Under the Treaty of 1868, the U.S. government promised the territory, including the entirety of the Black Hills, to the Sioux so long as the buffalo may range thereon in such numbers as to justify the chase. After the discovery of gold on the land, American settlers migrated to the area in the 1870s. The federal government then forced the Sioux to relinquish the Black Hills portion of their reservation. The 4 presidential faces were said to be carved into the granite to symbolize an accomplishment born, planned, and created in the minds and by the hands of Americans for Americans. Mount Rushmore is known to the Lakota Sioux as the 6 grandfathers, T-E-U-A ring K-A tilde inverted exclamation mark A ring inverted exclamation mark Ela A ring A tilde inverted exclamation mark, or Cougar Mountain, M-A tilde superscripto Takapai tilde inverted exclamation mark, but American settlers knew it variously as Cougar Mountain, Sugarloaf Mountain, Slaughterhouse Mountain, and Keystone Cliffs. As 6 grandfathers, the mountain was on the route that Lakota leader Black Elk took in a spiritual journey that culminated at Black Elk Peak. Following a series of military campaigns from 1876 to 1878, the United States asserted control over the area, a claim that is still disputed based on the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie. Beginning with the prospecting expedition in 1885 with David Swansea, husband of Carrying Gulls, and Bill Shalley, wealthy investor Charles E. Rushmore began visiting the area regularly on prospecting and hunting trips. He repeatedly joked with colleagues about naming the mountain after himself. The United States Board of Geographic Names officially recognized the name Mount Rushmore in June 1930. Historian Don Robinson conceived the idea for Mount Rushmore in 1923 to promote tourism in South Dakota. In 1924, Robinson persuaded sculptor Gutzon Borglum to travel to the Black Hills region to ensure the carving could be accomplished. The original plan was to make the carvings in granite pillars known as the needles. However, Borglum realized that the eroded needles were too thin to support sculpting. He chose Mount Rushmore, a grander location, partly because it faced southeast and enjoyed maximum exposure to the sun. Borglum said upon seeing Mount Rushmore, "America will march along that skyline." Borglum had been involved in sculpting the Stone Mountain Memorial to Confederate leaders in Georgia but was in disagreement with the officials there. U.S. Senator Peter Norbeck and Congressman William Williamson of South Dakota introduced bills in early 1925 for permission to use federal land, which passed easily. South Dakota legislation had less support, only passing narrowly on its third attempt, which Governor Carl Gunderson signed into law on March 5, 1925. Private funding came slowly and Borglum invited President Calvin Coolidge to an August 1927 dedication ceremony, at which he promised federal funding. Congress passed the Mount Rushmore National Memorial Act, signed by Coolidge, which authorized up to $250,000 in matching funds. The 1929 presidential transition to Herbert Hoover delayed funding until an initial federal match of $54,670.56 was acquired. Carving started in 1927 and ended in 1941 with no fatalities. Between October 4, 1927, and October 31, 1941, Gutzon Borglum and 400 workers sculpted the colossal 60-foot-high, 18 meters, carvings of United States Presidents George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln to represent the first 150 years of American history. These presidents were selected by Borglum because of their role in preserving the republic and expanding its territory. The carving of Mount Rushmore involved the use of dynamite, followed by the process of honeycombing, a process where workers drill holes close together, allowing small pieces to be removed by hand. In total, about 450,000 short tons, 410,000 tons, of rock were blasted off the mountainside. The image of Thomas Jefferson was originally intended to appear in the area at Washington's right, but after the work there was begun, the rock was found to be unsuitable, so the work on the Jefferson figure was dynamited, and a new figure was sculpted to Washington's left. The chief carver of the mountain was Luigi Del Bianco, an artisan and stonemason in Port Chester, New York. Del Bianco emigrated to the U.S. from Friuli in Italy and was chosen to work on this project because of his understanding of sculptural language and ability to imbue emotion in the carved portraits. In 1933, the National Park Service took Mount Rushmore under its jurisdiction. Julian Spotts helped with the project by improving its infrastructure. For example, he had the tram upgraded so it could reach the top of Mount Rushmore for the ease of workers. By July 4, 1934, Washington's face had been completed and was dedicated. The face of Thomas Jefferson was dedicated in 1936, and the face of Abraham Lincoln was dedicated on September 17, 1937. In 1937, a bill was introduced in Congress to add the head of the civil rights leader Susan B. Anthony, but a rider was passed on an appropriations bill requiring federal funds to be used to finish only those heads that had already been started at that time. In 1939, the face of Theodore Roosevelt was dedicated. The Sculptor's Studio A display of unique plaster models and tools related to sculpting was built in 1939 under the direction of Borglum. Borglum died from an embolism in March 1941. His son, Lincoln Borglum, continued the project. Originally, it was planned that the figures would be carved from head to waist, but insufficient funding forced the carving to end. Borglum had also planned a massive panel in the shape of the Louisiana Purchase commemorating an 8-foot tall gilded letters the deletion of independence, the U.S. Constitution, the Louisiana Purchase, and 7 other territorial acquisitions from the Alaska Purchase to the Panama Canal Zone. In total, the entire project cost $989,992 equivalent to $18.2 million in 2021. Nick Clifford, the last remaining carver, died in November 2019 at age 98. Harold Spitznagel and Cecil Doty designed the original visitor center, which finished in 1957. These structures were part of the Mission 66 effort to improve visitors' facilities at national parks and monuments across the country. 10 years of redevelopment work culminated with the completion of extensive visitor facilities and sidewalks in 1998, such as a visitor center, the Lincoln Borglum Museum, and the Presidential Trail. Maintenance of the memorial requires mountain climbers to monitor and seal cracks annually. Due to budget constraints, the memorial is not regularly cleaned to remove lichens. However, on July 8, 2005, Alfred K. Currency-Ricker, a German manufacturer of pressure washing and steam cleaning machines, conducted a free clean-up operation that lasted several weeks, using pressurized water at over 200 degrees F, 93 degrees C. On October 15, 1966, Mount Rushmore was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. A 500-word essay giving the history of the United States by Nebraska student William Andrew Burkett was selected as the college age group winner in a 1934 competition, and that essay was placed on the entablature on a bronze plate in 1973. In 1991, President George H.W. Bush officially dedicated Mount Rushmore. In 1937, when the sculpture was not yet complete, a bill in Congress supporting the addition of women's rights activist Susan B. Anthony failed. When the sculpture was completed in 1941, the sculptors said that the remaining rock was not suitable for additional carvings. This stance was shared by Respec, an engineering firm charged with monitoring the stability of the rock in 1989. However, proposals for additional sculptures have been made regardless. These include John F. Kennedy after his assassination in 1963, and Ronald Reagan in 1985 and 1999, the latter proposal receiving a debate in Congress at the time. Barack Obama was asked about his potential addition in 2008, and he joked that his ears were too large. Donald Trump has on occasion expressed interest in his addition to the mountain. During a 2017 rally in Ohio, he said, "I'd ask whether or not you someday think I will be on Mount Rushmore. If I did it joking, totally joking, having fun, the fake news media will say, he believes he should be on Mount Rushmore. So I won't say it." By the 2018 account of South Dakota Governor Christine Noem, Trump described the potential addition as his dream in conversation. In August 2020, it was alleged that the previous year, White House aides working for President Donald Trump made contact with Noem the previous year about the process of adding additional presidents, including Trump, to the monument. Trump denied the accusation on his official Twitter account, saying he never suggested it. Although, based on all of the many things accomplished during the first 3+1 years, perhaps more than any other presidency, sounds like a good idea to me. According to a survey of political science experts conducted by the New York Times in 2018, Franklin D. Roosevelt was the most popular choice for addition to Mount Rushmore, regardless of party affiliation. In total, 66% of respondents would choose Roosevelt, followed by Barack Obama at 7% and Ronald Reagan at 5%. Among Democrats, Roosevelt was chosen by 75%, followed by Obama at 11%. Among Republicans, Roosevelt was chosen by 43%, followed by Reagan at 19%. Among independents, Roosevelt was chosen by 57%, followed by both Reagan and Dwight D. Eisenhower at 11%. Tourism is South Dakota's second largest industry, and Mount Rushmore is the state's top tourist attraction. 2,185,447 people visited the park in 2012. The popularity of the location, as with many other national monuments, derives from its immediate recognizability. There are no substitutes for iconic resources such as the Statue of Liberty, the Lincoln Memorial, or Mount Rushmore. These locations are one-of-a-kind places. However, Mount Rushmore also provides access to a surrounding environment of wilderness, which distinguishes it from the typical proximity of national monuments to urban centers like Washington, D.C., and New York City. In the 1950s and 1960s, Local Lakota Sioux elder Benjamin Black Elk, son of Medicine Man Black Elk, who had been present at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, was known as the fifth face of Mount Rushmore, posing for photographs with thousands of tourists daily in his native attire. The South Dakota State Historical Society notes that he was one of the most photographed people in the world over those 20 years. Borglum originally envisioned a grand hall of records where America's greatest historical documents and artifacts could be protected and shown to tourists. He managed to start the project but cut only 70 feet, 21 meters, into the rock before work stopped in 1939 to focus on the faces. In 1998, an effort to complete Borglum's vision resulted in a repository being constructed inside the mouth of the cave housing 16 enamel panels that contain biographical and historical information about Mount Rushmore as well as the texts of the documents Borglum wanted to preserve there. The vault consists of a teakwood box, housing the 16 panels, inside of a titanium vault placed in the ground with a granite capstone. The ongoing conservation of the site is overseen by the National Park Service. Physical efforts to conserve the monument have included the replacement of the sealant applied originally to cracks in the stone by Gutzon Borglum, which had proved ineffective at providing water resistance. The components of Borglum's sealant included linseed oil, granite dust, and white lead, but a modern silicone replacement for the cracks is now used, disguised with granite dust. In 1998, electronic monitoring devices were installed to track movement and the topology of the sculpture to an accuracy of 3 mm. The site was digitally recorded in 2009 using a terrestrial laser scanning method as part of the International Scottish 10 project, providing a higher resolution record to aid the conservation of the site. This data was made publicly accessible online. The flora and fauna of Mount Rushmore are similar to those of the rest of the Black Hills region of South Dakota. Birds including the turkey vulture, golden eagle, bald eagle, red-tailed hawk, swallows, and white-throated swifts fly around Mount Rushmore, occasionally making nesting spots in the ledges of the mountain. Smaller birds, including songbirds, nuthatches, woodpeckers, and flycatchers inhabit the surrounding pine forests. 0. Terrestrial mammals include the mouse, least chipmunk, red squirrel, skunk, porcupine, raccoon, beaver, badger, coyote, bighorn sheep, bobcat, elk, mule deer, yellow-bellied marmot, and American bison. 0. The striped chorus frog, western chorus frog, and northern leopard frog also inhabit the area, along with several species of snake. Grizzly Bear Brook and Starling Basin Brook, the two streams in the memorial, support fish such as the long-nosed dace and the brook trout. Mountain goats are not indigenous to the region. Those living near Mount Rushmore are descendants of a tribe that Canada gifted to Custer State Park in 1924, which later escaped. 0. At lower elevations, coniferous trees, mainly the ponderosa pine, surround most of the monument, providing shade from the sun. Other trees include the bur oak, the Black Hills spruce, and the cottonwood. 9 species of shrubs grow near Mount Rushmore. There is also a wide variety of wildflowers, including especially the snapdragon, sunflower, and violet. Towards higher elevations, plant life becomes sparser. However, only approximately 5% of the plant species found in the Black Hills are indigenous to the region. The area receives about 18 inches, 460 millimeters, of precipitation on average per year, enough to support abundant animal and plant life. Trees and other plants help to control surface runoff. Dike seeps and springs help to dam up water that is flowing downhill, providing watering spots for animals. In addition, stones like sandstone and limestone help to hold groundwater, creating aquifers. A 2016 investigation by the U.S. Geological Survey found unusually high concentrations of perchlorate in the surface water and groundwater of the area. A sample collected from a stream had a maximum perchlorate concentration of 54 micrograms per liter, roughly 270 times higher than samples taken from locations outside the area. The report concluded the probable cause of the contamination was the aerial fireworks displays that had taken place on Independence Days from 1998 to 2009. The National Park Service also reported that at least 27 forest fires around Mount Rushmore in that same period, 1998 to 2009, have been caused by fireworks displays. 0. A study of the fire scars present in tree ring samples indicates that forest fires occur in the ponderosa forests surrounding Mount Rushmore every 27 years. Large fires are not common. Most events have been ground fires that serve to clear forest debris. The area is a climax community. Recent pine beetle infestations have threatened the forest. Mount Rushmore is largely composed of granite. The memorial is carved on the northwest margin of the Black Elk Peak granite batholith in the Black Hills of South Dakota, so the geologic formations of the heart of the Black Hills region are also evident at Mount Rushmore. The batholith magma intruded into the pre-existing mica schist rocks during the Proterozoic, 1.6 billion years ago. Coarse-grained pegmatite dikes are associated with the granite intrusion of Black Elk Peak and are visibly lighter in color, thus explaining the light-colored streaks on the foreheads of the presidents. The Black Hills granites were exposed to erosion during the Neoproterozoic but were later buried by sandstone and other sediments during the Cambrian. Remaining buried throughout the Paleozoic, they were re-exposed again during the Lauromydrogeny around 70 million years ago. The Black Hills area was uplifted as an elongated geologic dome. Subsequent erosion stripped the granite of the overlying sediments and the softer adjacent schist. Some schists remain and can be seen as the darker material just below the sculpture of Washington. The tallest mountain in the region is Black Elk Peak, 7,242 feet or 2,207 meters. Borglum selected Mount Rushmore as the site for several reasons. The rock of the mountain is composed of smooth, fine-grained granite. The durable granite erodes only 1 inch, 25 millimeters, every 10,000 years. Thus was more than sturdy enough to support the sculpture and its long-term exposure. The mountain's height of 5,725 feet, 1,745 meters, above sea level made it suitable, and because it faces the southeast, the workers also had the advantage of sunlight for most of the day. It is not possible to add another president to the memorial, because the rock that surrounds the existing faces is not suitable for additional carving, and because if additional sculpting work were done, that might create instabilities in the existing carvings. The Mount Rushmore area is underlain by well-drained delphosol soils of very gravelly loam, Mockmont, to silt loam, Bosca, texture, brown to dark grayish-brown. Mount Rushmore has a dry winter humid continental climate, DWB in the K8-Pilcropan climate classification. It is inside a USDA plant hardiness zone of 5A, meaning certain plant life in the area can withstand a low temperature of no less than A'28 degrees F, A'29 degrees C. The two wettest months of the year are May and June. Orographic lift causes brief but strong afternoon thunderstorms during the summer. Mount Rushmore has been depicted in multiple films, comic books, and television series. Its functions vary from settings for action scenes to the site of hidden locations. Its most famous appearance is as the location of the final chase scene in the 1959 film North by Northwest. It is used as a secret base of operations by the protagonists in the 2004 film Team America. World Police and the secret underground city of Kabola is located there in the 2007 film National Treasure, Book of Secrets. In some films, the presidential faces are replaced with others. Examples include the 1980 film Superman 2 and the 1996 film Mars Attacks, where the villains add their faces to the monument, and in the 2003 film Head of State where the newly elected president's face is added. In works showing attacks on landmarks to signify the scope of a threat, Mount Rushmore is a common target. Examples include the aforementioned facial replacements in Superman 2 and Mars Attacks, as well as natural disasters in works like the 2006 miniseries 10.5, Apocalypse, and terrorist attacks as in the 1997 film The Peacekeeper. An atypical representation of the monument appears in the 2013 film Nebraska, where instead of being treated with the reverence it is criticized for being unfinished. The Treaty of Fort Laramie, 1868, granted the Black Hills to the Lakota people in perpetuity, but the United States took the area from the tribe after the Great Sioux War of 1876. Members of the American Indian movement led an occupation of the monument in 1971, naming it Mount Crazy Horse, and Lakota holy man John Fire Lame Deer planted a prayer staff on top of the mountain. Lame Deer said that the staff formed a symbolic shroud over the president's faces which shall remain dirty until the treaties concerning the Black Hills are fulfilled. Construction on the Crazy Horse Memorial began in 1940 elsewhere in the Black Hills, ostensibly to commemorate the Native American leader and as a response to Mount Rushmore. If completed, it would be larger than Mount Rushmore. The Crazy Horse Memorial Foundation has rejected offers of federal funds. Its construction has the support of some Lakota chiefs, but it is the subject of controversy, even among Native American tribes. The 1980 United States Supreme Court decision United States v. Sioux Nation of Indians ruled that the Sioux had not received just compensation for their land in the Black Hills, which includes Mount Rushmore. The court proposed $102 million as compensation for the loss of the Black Hills. This compensation was valued at $1.3 billion in 2011, and with accumulated interest nearly $2 billion in 2021. In 2020, Oglala Lakota Nation citizen and indigenous activist Nick Tilson explained that his people would not accept the settlement, because we won't settle for anything less than the full return of our lands as stipulated by the treaties our nations signed and agreed upon. In 2004, Gerard Baker was appointed superintendent of the park, the first and so far only Native American in that role. Baker stated that he will open up more avenues of interpretation, and that the four presidents are only one avenue and only one focus. On July 3, 2020, scores of activists demonstrated when President Donald Trump held a campaign rally at Mount Rushmore. The foremost message was that indigenous people want their land back. Under the ongoing dispute of the Black Hills land claim, 20 people were arrested. On August 11, 1952, the U.S. Post Office issued the Mount Rushmore Memorial 3-cent commemorative stamp on the 25th anniversary of the dedication of the Mount Rushmore National Memorial. On January 2, 1974, a 26-cent airmail stamp depicting the monument was also issued. In 1991, the United States Mint released commemorative silver dollar, half-dollar, and $5 coins celebrating the 50th anniversary of the monument's dedication, and the sculpture was the main subject of the 2006 South Dakota State Quarter. In music, American composer Michael Dougherty's 2010 piece for chorus and orchestra, Mount Rushmore, depicts each of the four presidents in separate movements. The piece sets texts by George Washington, William Billings, Thomas Jefferson, Maria Cosway, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. By contrast, the song, Little Snakes, by Protest the Hero, addresses the violent colonial history involved in the sculpting of Mount Rushmore, critiquing the monument as a symbol of colonialism, referencing the genocide of indigenous peoples and the ownership of slaves by George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. The Washington Nationals Baseball Club uses large foam rubber depictions of the Rushmore Four in both their marketing campaigns and in a series of in-stadium promotions such as the President's Race.